Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Honey Sundays. I am here with my good friend Maddie, who I actually met working in my first functional medicine job, and I think it was hers as well. So we cannot wait. We're going to uncover so many things. I feel like I could talk to her for hours, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear from her. So, Maddie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here because it means you actually have a podcast, and I've wanted you to start this for so long, so I'm so excited.
Yeah, it has been a long talk before I actually got this going, which is hilarious. And I'm so excited to have you on because I feel like I've had the gift of having a lot of guests on the show where we are talking about this stuff all the time. Like this, what you guys see in this podcast episode is exactly what Maddie and I talk about all the time, just because we're really interested in it, not necessarily because it's work specifically. And I think just what we've learned from working at the same place and then going off on our own and doing different things, there's just been so much more teaching and things that we come together and then discuss. So I'm really excited. Maddie to give you background, she's a certified holistic nutrition therapist. So very similar, but she has expertise in totally different realms that I don't have, which we'll talk about later, like muscle testing, AO scans, all these things. But yeah, let's give everyone some background
Mhm.
on how did you get into holistic health, first of all, because you were in ministry before. So what
Mhm.
was that like segue to where we met?
Yeah, okay. I think I'm grateful my parents gave us a good kind of lens from the beginning when we were kids of we did do our regular, like, doctor checkups, but then they would also bring us to a chiropractor, and it kinda gave me a good foundation. There's one memory that comes to mind when I was 10. I did, like, my normal checkup at the doctor, and they told me I had acid reflux, and they prescribed a medication, and I don't know why I thought to ask this when I was 10, but I was like, "How long will I have to take this?" And the doctor said, "Every day for the rest of your life." And my mom remembers this too. She was like, "No, that's right." Like, that is literally what they said, and it was a pink pill, and it tasted bad, and it was disgusting, and I just remember being like, "'Kay, that seems extreme." And then we had a chiropractic appointment, like, a week later, and he asked me, like, "What's new? What's going on in life?" And I told him about that whole experience, and he's a pretty blunt guy, and he was like, "Okay, come here." And he just, like, dug his knuckles into my sternum and went like and just moved it, like, left to right, and it was my lower esophageal sphincter. He, like, adjusted that, and he goes, "You won't have acid reflux anymore." And I didn't. I was
Wow.
fine after that. And so that was kind of a first moment for me of, like, a lens shift a little bit of being like, "This guy actually helped me. Whenever I go to the doctor, it's always an antibiotic, it's always a medication, every time." And that pattern just kinda continued too, just like mental health, sports injuries in, like, high school and college. Like, if I went to kind of a normal doctor, it was like even for, like, foot pain, it was like, "Here's a med." And then I started to go see, like, nutritionists. I saw this amazing manual physical therapist out in Connecticut, and he was, like, the first person to introduce me to gut health, which was super interesting because I was there for foot pain with, like, long distance running, and he was just kinda, like, working on me. Good, like, Christian man, just incredible, like, started this practice, and he was like, "Your foot hurts when you run because your pelvis is tilted, and your pelvis is tilted because your gut's inflamed." And he just handed me a book about gut health, and it just totally opened my eyes to a whole new world. He recommended, like, an anti-inflammatory diet, and I started to do that, and my mood was better, my sleep was better, I had less pain, I had less bloating, and was like, "What is this?" And it just really just opened my eyes to, like, food is medicine and all of that too. So I think that's kind of like, yeah, how the
Yeah.
foundation of it started.
Yeah, and the fact that everything's connected. Like this isn't stuff we learn about even if you go the medical route of, I'm thinking nursing school for myself or medicine in general. You don't learn about these things being connected. And
Mhm.
then there's the reputations from the chiropractors and different things of like, oh,
Yeah.
it's all connected through the nervous system and depending on who you're talking about and what their say is, but there's such a connection point that's lacking. I always think of like the eyes and the liver. Like when you have, jaundice or inflammation of the liver, the yellow of your eyes or the white of your eyes will turn yellow. And it's like, it's just so interesting to me because when we have eye issues, like
Right.
how's the liver doing or
Yes.
vice versa? And yeah, just so interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so then you went in to pursue you were doing ministry
Mhm.
for a while. So fill us in on that. That's college, right?
Yep, right after college, I went into campus ministry. So I went right back to college campuses as like a missionary on a team and worked with college students, led Bible studies, just evangelizing kind of front lines of where a lot of people kind of get misguided from truth. And I was on campus for about 6 years. And then I worked at our ministry headquarters. That's what brought me up to Colorado for 2 years. And it's kind of a funny story how God ended up calling me out of ministry into where I am here. And it started with waking up with shingles one day.
And you were like, I mean, that was young. Shingles is primarily
Yes.
older.
No, exactly, exactly. So I'm like, "What first of all, what is this?" As I'm figuring it out, and I happen to have a chiropractic appointment that week as well. Different chiropractor is out in Denver, and it's actually the chiropractor I work with now, Doctor Chavez
Mhm.
at Vita Nova Spinal Care. And he knows me well even at this point, and so he's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I have shingles." And he was like, "You're young, you are healthy, if you're young and you live a healthy lifestyle, this could only come from a significant amount of stress."
Mm.
And my first thought was, I don't feel stressed. I love my life. I have so many friends. I have great community. I like my job. I love Denver. And so nothing immediately came to mind as like stress. And so I like gave it some thought, but just not much came to mind. And then a week later, I had a call with a mentor and was just telling her about the shingles experience, mentioned what Dr. Chavez said. And I was like, it's funny because I like my job. I don't really feel stressed. And she said, in her like little holy voice, she was like, "Did you ask Jesus why you have shingles?" And I was like, "No, no, I didn't, not yet." So that day I like drove to a chapel and just looked at Jesus and was like, "Jesus, why did I get shingles?"
Mhm.
And it was immediate. It was like an answer right away. And he was like, "I am telling you something and you are ignoring me." And what had happened kind of over the last couple months, I remember I was like at a stoplight just driving home from work and I just talked to Jesus out loud in the car for fun. And what just came out of my mouth was, "Lord, if I would be more holy not working in ministry, I invite you to call me out of this." And I said it, and then my next thought was like, "That was weird. That was random. I don't know why I prayed that." And I just kind of forgot about it. And then I would have these little thoughts once in a while of like, what would I do if I wasn't working for the church? No, I have to do this. This is a good thing to do. Just kind of shove it down. And that had been happening like over and over again. And so Jesus was like, I am inviting you to something and you're not listening. Even thinking about like when every time a thought came up, it was like I literally pushed it down. And it's like I was pushing it down right to my hips, almost like in that area. And so that was a big moment for me. And what I did was I took out a journal and was like, what lies do I believe about leaving ministry? And I had no idea that those were even there. They were kind of subconscious. I think I journaled like 2 or 3 pages, and it was just things I didn't even know I really thought until I gave it, the space. But it was like, I can only be holy if I work for the church. I'm a bad person if I live far away from my family just by my own choice, not because I was like asked to. Yeah, or I'm not smart enough to do anything else, to go back to school, things like that. And so I first just rejected those lies and like invited God to replace them with truth. But then they started showing up in my life too. Like I would be on the phone with my parents and they would just out of the blue be like, "We're so happy you live in Denver. You're just thriving there. Like you should stay. You just love it." And it was just kind of God for me, like undoing these lies. It's probably a whole other story, a whole other podcast of how I decided to do nutrition specifically. But what I want to say about the shingle story, what I love it of like, isn't that God? Like, it's not a punishment. He wasn't like, you're not listening, so I'm giving you shingles. Like, what I want to emphasize is he speaks to us through our bodies. Like symptoms are our bodies telling us something is off. And something we talk about so much at this office is health comes from living in accord with how God made you. And if you think about like we have a creator, how did he design us? And you think about our needs, like we need a good night's sleep, we need fresh water, we need healthy food. We also need like good friendship and community. We need fun, we need purposeful work. And you think about things like that of like what makes every person kind of thrive. And the chiropractor I work with, Dr. Chavez and I, if something's off in someone's health, we always kind of start there and we ask. And you're good at this too, Andy. Like I love how you could have somebody's lab panel in front of you and you're like, what are you looking forward to in your life? Are you stressed? Are you having fun? Like, do you just need to get more sunlight and have like a good coffee with a friend? Because you understand, like, yeah, living in accord with your design, our nervous system, stress, all these things. Um, yeah. And so I was like, I was not listening to God. It was, yeah, living outside of my design in that way of just like not really listening to like, what do you want for my life? Where are you inviting me? And he was using my body to like show me that stress in my
Yeah.
life.
So for someone, I love this. I love this story and I love listening to you share this firsthand because I think there's a lot of people resonating with this that don't even know maybe. Like it's just clicking because like you said, you're like, yeah, shingles was random. And that's all you could think of it. You could still be in ministry, right?
Yeah.
Like you could have been like, oh, that was weird. And I think every symptom or thought, like especially when we're doing subconscious things. So, like driving, that's when the thoughts come in. When we're in the shower, when we're driving, when we're not really thinking much, that's when they're trickled in. And then we can either expand on them or inquire, or we can just be like, nah. And
Yeah.
that's fine, but it's hard because it's hard to know. Because sometimes it's like, "Okay, how do you know if this is God, or how do you know if this
Mhm.
is me?" And what I love about your story is you kept asking. It wasn't like you did get a clear answer through the one time you prayed and you're like, "I was random, why did I pray that?" And then you journaled, and then you kept asking because I do think for those listening, and I want your take on this too, but for those that it might be in this spot of like, maybe I should do something different, but I don't know what I'm being called into, what would your advice be to them?
Mhm.
Because, yeah, and how would you differentiate? I mean, we kind of just answered it. Maybe like continue to inquire could be one answer, but do you have any other thoughts on that?
I do. What's coming to mind, it's Sirach chapter 38. It has so much about like healing and what to do when you
Mhm.
have an issue like that. So like you get gut pains all the time, you have migraines all the time, and you're like, what is going on? And God gives us a formula for what to do.
Mm.
So like I'm just going to go verse by verse here, but it's Sirach chapter 38, verse 9 is where I'm going to start. And it says, my son, when you are sick, do not be negligent, but pray to the Lord and he will heal you. So that's like our step one is like go to God first and just simply ask for healing. Like, heal my migraines, Jesus, heal this gut pain. But then it keeps going. Give your up your faults and direct your hands aright and cleanse your heart from all sin. And so this is like first go to God, but then get right with God and with yourself, and this is kind of where the living in accord question comes in of like, one, is there like a nasty sin in my life that is keeping me sick? Is there separation in my life? In my case, like I had to repent of pride in my story of the shingle story of like, I just thought I knew better than God. I don't need to ask him what I need to do with my life. I know. And then I had to repent of believing lies too. I've been like partnering with these lies that I'm not smart enough or I wouldn't be a good person without this. So it's like, what do you need to kind of cut out of your life? What do you need to repent of? A good thing to look at is coping mechanisms. Like when I'm super stressed, when I am dysregulated, where do I go? And if it's not God, even if it's not a sin like social media, it's like, are you just using that to pacify? And is it becoming so much of a habit that you're not paying attention to the person in front of you, or you're up late at night and you're not getting good sleep? And, these things just kind of like waterfall down.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then it goes into give the physician his place, for the Lord created him. And so it's like, and there's a time where success lies in the hands of physicians, for they too will pray to the Lord. And so it's like, you can still ask for help. Go seek a holistic medicine, so many different avenues of healing, and seek wisdom from other people. It doesn't mean go right to your PCP. I guess you can, but you can also go to other avenues. But it's like, get your heart right first and then go to the body and go to get support, get help. But I like the order of events there first,
Mhm.
like God, kind of check with yourself and then seek help from the physician. Isn't that
Yeah.
cool that that's
That's
in the Bible?
Yeah, that's really good. And it is a really great mirror for your story as well of yours wasn't a physician, it was a mentor, which,
Mhm.
of the based on, define the terms, but at the same time, she basically just asked you that one question. Did you ask? Like,
Mhm.
have you asked any questions or thought about it this way? And I think that's where going back, it's all connecting, but community and do you have people that will actually kind of sit with you in it and just ask you the hard questions? Maddie,
Totally.
have you even thought about it? Have you even prayed about it? Like, what are you coming up with? Because I feel and I'm sure you see this as well, but a lot of the times with clients that I've worked with in holistic health, I'm asking them a question that they already know the answer. I'm
Mhm.
not really saying like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Yes, sometimes, but a lot of the times, especially when it gets to the emotional stuff, they're like, I know exactly what my stress is, or I know exactly what this is. And sometimes it's harder to uncover, but usually that is the underlying thing that's causing the symptom. And I'd love to expand more on this of how these symptoms manifest because I've talked about this in a few solo episodes, but there is the mind, spirit, and body is the actual connection. And so it's
Totally.
like, what is your take on that connection, I guess? And really what I'm asking here is like, do you think it starts in the mind? Do you think it starts in the spirit? Then it goes to the body.
Interesting.
What's your take?
Yeah. Okay. I'll tell you what's coming to mind. Also, you know what I've loved about your podcast so far is like there are themes coming up. Like you've had amazing guests and like there's a lot of overlap in the best kind of way of like things coming up. And I'm like, oh, God's totally leading kind of like where this podcast
Yeah.
is going. It's been so cool. So I'm like, everyone listen to all the episodes, but Bonnie's my favorite. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
Bonnie.
I have sent that to so many clients. She talked about where disease comes from and our
Mhm.
emotions
Yeah,
and
you
all
guys need to meet. We're gonna have to
I
set
know.
that
No,
up.
I was like, "I'm gonna go see Bonnie. She's
That'd be
something."
great.
But she briefly said this comment of, like, disease started at the fall, and by the fall, she means, like, Adam and Eve, like, God created the world perfect. In some sense or other, we had a disconnect, a break, and sin enters the world, and now we have separations. There's 4 separations that come from that. We're separated from God, so it's like we were, walking in the garden with him, and now we can't, like it's harder, to see him, touch him, feel him. Separation from ourselves, so that could be self-hatred, I'm gonna talk about that. Separation from others, so now we have, like, miscommunications, disunity in relationships, and then separation from nature, which we're living, more than any other time, I think.
For sure.
And so you and I read this book this summer, I think, or last summer, you got it too, The More Excellent Way. And it's awesome. It talks also about the spiritual roots of disease, but he points to like all disease comes from a separation of at least one of these areas. And so I kind of started experimenting with it and got into like a kick of I would just tell that to my clients and be like, which one resonates with you? After I kind of described them. And one of the first people I did this with, I'll call her Molly. That's not her name because of HIPAA. We'll call her Molly. Right away, she was like, I'm the third one or the second one, which was separation from self.
Mm,
And I just said, "What do you mean by that?" And she said, "My husband says I'm not very nice to myself." And it just opened up a conversation of like, what is your self-talk? What do you say to yourself? And I see this pattern all the time with autoimmune disease, and which is what she was seeing me for, is self-hatred because the body reflects what's going on in the soul and the mind. And so in your mind, if you are attacking yourself constantly, I'm horrible, I suck, I'm bad at everything, I ruin everything, your antibodies are also attacking yourself. It's reflecting that. And so her and I talked through it and I gave her just kind of an exercise for the week of writing down lies, kind of like what I did, back in the shingles story. What lies do you believe about yourself? And rejecting those in the name of Jesus, because that's powerful, using his name. And then ask God to replace it with truth. What do you say about this, God? Who am I? And then say those truths every day. So you only need to reject the lies once, but then you really want to focus on the truths. And when she was seeing me at that point, if she walked to her mailbox, she had to take a nap. She'd get so tired. Like she had like extreme fatigue. And the next week she was like, I walked a mile. I walked around the
wow.
block. Like when she was getting stronger and we were just like really sticking with like truth every day, like learning to love yourself and see yourself as God sees you.
I love that. That's really sweet. I also want to touch on this is where, so affirmations, I'm very pro affirmations because it's similar. What are the truths you're speaking over, right? However, this is where what's really crucial, I think, is that uncovering the lies and then replacing them because you can say affirmations all day, like
Mm.
random, like I
Yeah.
am loved. But which is great, that one's great, but if you don't actually come to terms with that root of it, that
Yeah.
lie, yes, and say, like, "I'm no longer going to accept this as truth, and I'm going to replace it." I think that there's such more of a deeper understanding because I think there's a lot of people that say affirmations or mantras or whatever you want to call them, and even people that speak scripture over themselves. But if they're not believing the scripture, like I'm
Yeah,
fearfully and wonderfully made, that's a very common one. Okay, but do you actually like receive that and understand? Like, do you have an understanding and a feeling that that's eliciting, or is it you're just kind of saying it because you feel like you should? 'Cause I
right.
think that that's, like, the huge part that people might be missing in healing.
Mhm. Totally. What I love about that too, like, kind of an added tool is, like, praying through memories, which that could be a whole other podcast episode
Yeah.
too, but there's one part that I love of, like, in that moment, whether it was a huge trauma or it was, like, somebody said something hurtful to you, before you jump into forgiveness, before you jump into, "Jesus, where were you in this memory?" Asking, like, "What lies did I come to believe about God, myself, the world in that moment?" And that can just bring such deep healing too, because it's like, "Oh, I didn't realize, like, that's when I decided, like, the world's a scary place and I need to be on edge so nothing bad happens to me." And when you, like, reject that lie and bring something like, the truth in and bring God into that, like, it can change literally your whole worldview.
Totally. Yes, it's what we're holding on to, and a lot of this, happens in childhood of, like, majority is when we're little, it's like, God doesn't care about me or my mom doesn't care about me or things like that where it's like, how do
Totally,
they manifest in your adulthood and your relationships and in your life? And it's not your fault necessarily, it's just a coping mechanism. The brain tries to protect us. So,
totally.
and however they're gonna do that. That's so good.
Do you wanna
Go ahead.
do you wanna hear another separation story?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's do it. No, because I think the more stories the more stories are great because this is how people resonate and they're like, "Hmm, how is that showing up for me?" So, yes, share them
Yeah,
all.
sure, okay. Okay, we'll call this one Sally. I don't like Sally, what's a better name? No offense if your name out there is Sally. Susie.
Susie.
Um, God bless HIPAA. Susie started coming to me because she had pain, like knife across the stomach pain every time she ate. And it had gotten so bad she was going to the hospital regularly and like she got a lot of tests and they didn't even book a follow-up appointment with her. They sent her a letter in the mail that just said, "Congrats, you don't have cancer." After she spent like thousands of dollars on testing. So she was pretty desperate. Most people that are desperate end up in my office. That's when I see them. Um, but she lots of pain with eating. We identified pretty quickly it was gallbladder attacks, and I have lots of protocols for that, and she was doing great. Like, it would took a lot of work. It was anti-inflammatory diet, gallbladder flushes, lots of detox, things like that, but we would get her in this really good spot, and she'd, like, hold for a few months, and then the attacks would start again. She'd get this pain again with eating, and I worked with her for probably, like, a year, over a year at this point, and she started to get mad at me because she was like, "I'm spending all this money on supplements and I'm eating so clean and it works for a little while and then it doesn't." And I am like racking my brain, of what's going on with this. And I'll explain in a little bit what I do with biofeedback, but I have the AO scan, which is like a version of a biofeedback machine. And it gives you all kinds of information. But one of the things it points to is emotions in the body, like where they're stored, how they're affecting you. And so we did a scan of her gallbladder when I was just, yeah, kind of feeling stuck. And the like emotion, the word that came up on gallbladder was abuse. And so, as the practitioner, it's like, oh no, here's what do we gotta, where is this gonna go? What kind of hard conversation are we gonna have to have? And the next time she came in, it just was like, sometimes that comes up from generational stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that, and it doesn't necessarily mean physical abuse. It could be emotional. It could be, so kind of, is there anything you can point to in your life that in the past or currently felt that way? And she started crying. And so I'm like, oh no, what's she going to tell me? But she was like, it's not me, it's my husband. And so I'm thinking like, oh no, is her husband abusive? But she said he was abused as a little kid by his parents, and she was like, "I get so angry at his parents. I see the effects that it has on him now, like, it's hard in our marriage, all of these things," and she connected the dots that that pain came back every time she had to see his parents, whether it was, like, a
Interesting.
holiday or a family gathering, and they don't live here. It's, pretty sporadic every 5 to 6 months. She would have to see them, and that anger would come up at them. And that's when those gallbladder attacks would come back. So it was amazing. It was empowering for her because she knew kind of the source of it. But it was like, all right, now we got to work on resentment and forgiveness. And it's hard to talk about forgiveness when it's just a really horrible situation like that. And she wasn't ready to talk about forgiveness. So I just said, what? I don't remember what. I gave her like something to journal about that week of just kind of like the beginning stages of it. But she came back a couple weeks later and she looked amazing. She like had more color in her face. She was sitting up straighter. And I asked her, like, what are you doing? And she said, I'm yelling in the car. And I was like, "You gotta figure out how to get this
Yeah.
anger out anyway, buy a punching bag, pick up
Mhm.
some new exercise routine, like, journal it out, whatever it is," but that was what resonated with her, was just starting to it's the things you can't say to them that you'd want to, and just start getting it out of your body because your body's holding it right now, and she was like, "I probably look like a crazy person driving down the street." She's like, "Maybe people think I'm on the phone, who knows?"
Yeah.
But it was yelling in the car. That was, like, kinda the first step for her, for, like, working that anger out of the body.
That is so funny. Okay, I have so many things I wanna touch on based on what you just said. I also wanna just remind, like, people that are listening to, there is a physical aspect to that. I mean, it's all connected, but there's a physical aspect that Maddie is doing with clients too, and same with myself. Like, working with clients, it's just sometimes we are missing filling in the gaps, right? She's a perfect example. I've had so many of these of, okay, we do this, this, and this. I'm working with them for 6 months. They're not seeing progress. I have so many stories of that. One, when we were working together, this lady wanted to lose weight and we did just so many things and got rid of toxins and she was eating really clean and all this stuff. It was our second to last appointment. And again, also, I'm not a counselor. So you do have to tread lightly too of how much you want to open. And oftentimes we can refer out if we feel that's needed or necessary. But sometimes it's just a simple question. And I just said, do you remember anything significant happening when you started gaining weight? And she said, yeah, my son died. Her 22-year-old son died in a car accident. And I think I shared this on Bonnie's podcast as well, because this was probably one of the like click moments where I was like, oh my gosh, like your body really does hold on to emotions and things that we are probably not even aware of, but we are holding on to it subconsciously. And whether it manifests as symptoms when we're 22 or 65,
Right.
like my thought is at this point in my life is that it is going to come. If it's unresolved, your body can compensate and the body's amazing in intelligence, but I do think it will come eventually because, like you said, that resentment, that bitterness. Henry Wright, in the book that Maddie mentioned earlier, A More Excellent Way, he had a lady about arthritis, which is autoimmune.
Yeah.
And she really wanted to heal and all these things. And he said, are you ready to forgive whoever
Right.
she was holding on to resentment towards? I think it was her mom or I forget the story. And she was probably in her 70s, this patient that he was sharing the case of. And she was like, no, I'm not. And kind of until she had to work through that, right? Like it's almost like we're choosing a little bit, but I know it's also hard. So, like, for the person that doesn't want to forgive, slash, where do they even begin? Say they have this symptom and they're like, oh, I know it's stress. I know it's from my parent, or I know it's from my ex, or someone, what would you say in terms of kinda working through
Mm,
that?
totally. I think this is actually what I did give to Sally,
Mhm.
was you can't truly forgive someone until you acknowledge what debt they owe you first, because to say I forgive you is saying I release your debt, and we jump over that so much sometimes of like, I'll just forgive you, forgive and forget, but it goes a lot deeper when you acknowledge first, like, what was owed to you. And so what I'll do is I'll have people make a list of like, yeah, this person hurt you. What is it that they owe you? So if it's a parent, it's like, you owed me safety. You owed listening to me. You owed more attention to me when I needed it. Things like that. And it's like, kind of put yourself in a perfect world is kind of the prompts. Like, in a perfect world, what would you have wanted from this person? They owed me an apology. They owed me 5 years of my health or my life, whatever it is. And you have to hold that debt and feel it and feel the weight of it to be able to get to that point of actually saying, I release you of the debt that you owe me. Something that helps me in my prayers, I say, Jesus forgives you, so I will too. And I just imagine like Jesus forgiving that person for this debt. And it's like, "Oh, I want to be like him. So I'm going to try. I'm going to ask for that grace. But acknowledging And so if you can't get to the forgiveness piece, like, just start with the debt and start kind of accounting for it so you can feel it. So when you're ready, you have something to let go of.
That's really good. I think that's a really great way of phrasing that because really what it is, unforgiveness is holding on to. So what are we holding on to?
Mhm.
That thing that we should have gotten safety, peace, listening, all of that. So that's so good. I think that's a great practice for us to do. More so even on like a maybe like a more superficial level, but for those that just want to be more in touch with what's God saying to them, what's their intuition saying to them, and we can talk about all these terms. I think Maddie and we talk a lot about define the terms because there's a lot of overlap. Intuition, Holy Spirit, God guiding us, that inner voice, whatever you want to call it, everyone has it. And if they are tuned into it or trying to be, it can also be very buried. What would you say to someone that's trying to hear God more?
Yeah, great question. Silence comes up to my mind first of we just are not in a world that embraces silence. We love noise, we love the TV on in the background, we love our full schedules, and it just does not allow for self-awareness. So it's like, yeah, how could you know how you're doing, how you're feeling, what's going on in your heart without silence? And it's just like everything else, you have to schedule it. It's just the reality.
That's a good one. I haven't heard that before. Schedule the silence.
Because what I'm really saying is schedule prayer.
Yeah, right.
Try to
Yeah.
have more silence, turn off your music in your car or, be cooking dinner just without any background noise. Those are good things too, but I think the truest silence is, like, sitting, being with yourself, being with God, and if you're like, "I don't know his voice yet," it's like, that's where scripture is perfect of just learning, like, what does he sound like? What does he say? That's his word. It's, like, one of the easiest tools to hear him, I think, and then as you get to know his voice, then you start to hear it in the day to day. You're driving and you're like, "Yep, that's you, Lord. Okay."
Yeah. And I think it's uncomfortable. I've shared this story with you,
Absolutely.
but I had a
Like, people don't do
client.
it.
Yeah, I've shared this story with you for sure, but a former client of mine, I she was doing everything right on paper. Everything right. She was eating the green juices, working out, but not like crazy workouts. It was like good for her nervous system, active recovery, yoga, blah blah blah. And she was on paper, like she was, or what we would think of like someone that should be in perfect health. And, but she, through our conversation, I'm like, there is stress riding you. And her kids were school age. And I was like, I want you to lay on your bed and not do anything.
I
Like, don't
remember this.
yeah, don't listen to a podcast. Don't do anything. Just lay there with your hands. I wanted her to put her hand on her heart and her hand on her gut. Basically just literally sit there and I was like, "You can set a timer for 10 minutes." And she didn't answer at first. And I was like, "How do you feel about that?" And she's like, "No, that sounds terrible."
Mhm.
And it was just really interesting to me because the world is so noisy that it is really, really uncomfortable to get quiet. And same thing with people, and this is a great question for the audience to ask themselves of where do you feel uncomfortable in that silence? Like,
Yes.
is it driving in the car with no music, no podcast, no nothing? And you can also work your way up, which I think is a really great thing too, of like the 5 minutes, the 10 minutes. But then you do really start to crave it. Like you crave that quiet time and really start to cherish it because it is really where everything comes in. I mean, Jesus went to the woods for 40 days. And yes, he was tempted by the devil, but like how long was that compared to the time just in solitude?
Yeah, he
And
always went to the Father first.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, went up to pray, got up early, and I think that's why mornings are one of my favorites because especially like 5 a.m. mark, no one's up. It's really quiet. There's birds starting to sing. And other than that, it's just peace. But I can see why people don't like it. And I will say, I'm just chiming in here now, sorry. But
Great. It's
like
great.
do not look at your phone for the first hour that you wake up. I heard this really good analogy one time, and this guy was like, I wake up and he owned a company. He was really successful. And he was like, I wake up and all I do for my phone is I just check for fires. If there's any fires I need to put out in the company. And the person interviewing him, it might have been Ed Milet, but the person interviewing him was like, but you're always looking for fires. He's literally waking up, priming his brain of like,
Interesting.
what is going wrong that I need to fix? That's what his first question is, essentially.
Totally.
And that is so good because it might be a subconscious question of if we're going straight to social media, like, what is the dopamine hit I'm going for?
Mm,
Or what am I wanting to see? And start questioning that. But that's Maya also. I think silence is amazing. But just to piggyback on that, like, do not get on your phone the first
yeah,
hour. Don't
I love
touch
that.
it.
It's a
You
great
don't need to
practical.
touch it.
Yeah. Then you don't get that blue light, you can go outside instead. Get
Yes,
your circadian
exactly.
rhythm set. That reminds me of it was my senior year of college that I really started to, like, pray every day, and at first, like, I think I just left more anxious than when I got there, and I talked to we had sisters on our campus, like little nuns, and I talked to one of them about it, and I was like, "Why is that?" And she drew me a picture of the heart, and she was like, "You're living on the outside, kinda layer, and then when you're in silence, you start to go into the heart a little bit, and that's where there's uncomfortable things." This thing I'm afraid of or anxious or ashamed of, they start to come up, and that's usually, like, when people reach for their phone or
Mm,
seeing a friend, fill this noise. And so when you're in prayer and you're kind of forced to move past it, and that just helped me so much because 'cause I'm like that I think that's why a lot of people don't have silence, don't pray because it's like you hit that uncomfortable point, and whatever it is, that thing comes up, and you're like, "Oh, I don't wanna think about that." Grab the phone.
yeah.
But when you learn to sit in it and actually then bring it to God, I had an image in prayer the other day of just, like, having, like, a bin of dirty laundry on the floor and just showing it all to Jesus and just being like, "I've got this, and I've got this, and I've got this," and he was like, "I love that you're showing me this. I love that you invite me here," when other people just invite me into the kitchen when it's clean and maybe the living room, but they do not want me in any other room in their house.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, with you just pushing past the uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also the uncomfortable doesn't have to be, it might not need necessarily be a bad thing. Like I want to go back to Maddie's story of her being called out of ministry. Like that was at the time her identity of what she should do. It was a good thing, right? And kind of being called out of that and into nutrition. And it's not necessarily like it might be something simple. Hey, just a prompt and maybe you should go this direction, right? Rather than some it's, crazy thing. I think sometimes we just think of it as, like, a really heavy discomfort, and it can be, for sure, these feelings that we might be holding on to or memories that we don't wanna touch that we've buried away. Or it can just be something like, "Hey, maybe you should go to this bakery today," and I don't know, maybe your husband's there. I don't know. I'm just thinking of, like there's a lot of, like,
Yeah,
fun
just little
light
prompts.
things as well that you find in the silence.
That's so true.
It's not necessarily this heaviness all the time, and
Oh,
it can be, of course, but at the same time, like, it's not like every day you're gonna pray or meditate or sit in silence, and then it's gonna be like a new trauma, you
that is
know?
a great point. I'm glad you're pointing that out too, just to encourage people to want to pray. It's not like, okay, it's only gonna be uncomfortable. Like yesterday, I was bringing all of my anxieties to prayer, and Jesus was kind of pointing to me like, winter's over, spring is coming. And spring is exciting and bright in a new season, and I left so encouraged because I was like, "Yeah, I'm in this weird, transition time right now, but spring is coming. I am excited for spring." And it totally changed the perspective of my day.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, it doesn't have to it's not always heavy. I think sometimes and I wanna actually touch on this. This is not my plan, but we're gonna go here because one thing that Maddie and I talk a lot about too is you can also get stuck in the healing pattern, and you can become almost like worshiping this healing journey that you're on, and be careful of the words you're saying because we've seen this a lot. We've discussed several clients where it's almost like they've been sick or have something that has gone on for so long that it is really hard for them to let go of and just be free of. And yes, there's a spiritual component of this, absolutely. However, there's just a mindset component as well of like, I don't know who I am without this autoimmune issue, or I don't know who I am without this pain or victimhood. I feel like you had a story that you shared with me a while ago of just someone that basically is attached to this. And it's almost getting in the way of that freedom that's open and ready for them to receive, but sometimes we have such a hard time receiving too. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I as a practitioner, like, I pay attention to a lot of when people say "I am,"
Mhm.
whatever follows that. or it's like
Yeah,
my
wait, can you expand on this really quick? Because this is a really good component that I've heard you talk
Yeah,
about.
I feel like I'm just repeating what you're saying. When you say like those identity statements, I'm just not gonna be fertile. My uterus just doesn't work. Or like my gut's a mess. I hear that one a lot. My life's a mess. I'm a mess. Things like that. My always just that's when my ears kind of perk up of like, what? And just pressing in and challenging people of like, what do you believe about yourself? And I love being in a chiropractic office because chiropractic philosophy is that your body's designed to heal. Your body's designed to function. We are removing interference. In my office, that's toxins, but traumas and thoughts too. And we're adding in support. We're supporting your organs. We're giving you good nutrition, and your body will heal. You do the healing. I'm not healing you. God
Mhm.
heals you. Your body heals itself because that's how it's designed.
Yeah. Yeah, so good. And going back to the I am statements as well, I another layer of this because again, we went really deep really fast, which is amazing because I really do love talking about that and I think people can get so much out of it, but just on a lighter level, it doesn't have to be it's not necessarily like an affirmation statement. It's like how do you answer the phone? I have
Mm.
someone in my life that every time I call, I'm like, "Hey, how are you?" And they're like, "Oh, it's
Yeah.
rough. It's going." And it's like, and I've talked to said person about it, and I'm like, "Don't like, is it going? Or like, what are you happy about today?" Because truly, what we focus on is what we get. And if you are constantly looking for like, "Oh, it's going," I always call them like the Eeyores of
Yeah.
my friends, my
Womp
family that
womp.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, like, no matter what, the sun is shining, you just got $1,000,000, you got a free coffee, like, really, that comes back to the gratitude aspect and you looking for the things that light you up and that are really what I think about this a lot now because my daughter's, she's gonna be 2 soon, and it's like, wow, I really hoped for this. And there's a lot of hard parts too. There is less sleep, there is less scheduling, there is less silence. So there is less of that and you have to build it in differently. However, it's also something that I've wanted for so long. And I mean, Maddie's engaged for those that don't know. She's getting married
Woo!
later. And yeah, it's just like there's you could be really stressed about wedding stuff and different things and we can always get wrapped up in the now but then also just taking a step back of being like, "Wait, no, I really am so happy about where I am now." And I mean, yeah, you can share your little engagement story, but I feel like you were very prayerful about Alex and just like that
Mhm.
coming to fruition too of and just being open to receive what's coming next, which is really fun and exciting, whether it's a job or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever, a child. So we talked about spiritual, we talked about mental. Maybe now, I mean, silence is a big one, but also like what are 2 to 3 health habits for the physical body that you would say is most important for day to day?
Sure. I call it God food. It's just whole food in its form it was meant to be consumed in. So I have people fill out food journals and I'm always giving feedback of or swap ideas or things like that. But I always make sure to point out where they ate God food of like, you had blueberries at breakfast and you had an avocado at lunch and you ate chicken for dinner. And this is just food in its like whole form, not just fruit and vegetables too, but like meat, seeds, things like that. It's so simple, but it's forgotten a lot. So I just like the reframe of God food, first of all.
Yeah.
But one of the first things I work on with most people is around 30 grams of protein before coffee, ideally within the first hour of being awake. It's a blood sugar hack. It's one of I call it my quick win. It's one of my favorite things I do with people because I love working with people when they have like low energy and because it's one of those things that you can get back so quickly. And so many people come back and they're like, "Why am I not needing an afternoon nap or why do I not have my afternoon dip when all I've changed is breakfast?" But it's like your body follows patterns. When you get off that blood sugar roller coaster, right at the beginning of your day and you're in a stable place. And protein even uses up some of your insulin, it's digestion. There's a lot of great science to it, but you start balanced and you tend to stay more balanced. In I get the pushback a lot from people of like, well, I'm not hungry when I wake up. And I say, being hungry when you wake up is a sign of health. That is a nervous system that feels safe because when you're not safe, you suppress that hunger and you're in survival mode. and you're like, "I don't have time to eat. I have to run, run, run." But as your blood sugar balances, as stress comes down from that, even usually in just about 2 weeks, people start to their appetite comes back, their regulates, their metabolism kicks in, and they're waking up hungry. And then when you start with just a really good healthy breakfast of, like, high protein, high fat, kinda lower carb right in the morning, it tends to set you up for just better decisions throughout the day because 'cause you're just not having those crashes where you're like, "I just need a carb, I just need a second coffee, I need something sweet," and you're already, like, going towards having a higher protein goal for the day, which also helps. So I always start with breakfast, and it helps almost everybody.
That's great. Yeah, I think majority of people are skipping breakfast, but they're still having something
Sure.
like a Starbucks refresher or
Yeah.
um, a coffee. My dad is notorious. He is a lifelong loyalist to Dunkin' coffee creamer. Like, they should sponsor him. But in the amount of creamer he puts in, and he's like, "Well, I just never eat breakfast. I just drink my coffee." And I'm like, "But you do. Like, you're having, like, 100 calories and probably 35 grams of sugar of
Right.
your creamer." So, I think this is another thing too of, like, you kind of are curbing it in the wrong way and for a shorter amount of time, of
Right,
course.
and then you're not fasting either, so, like, fasting has a great time and place
Mhm.
also, but, I've had people like that, they're like, they have their coffee creamer or, they're like, "Well, I fast, but I'll just, like, have a handful of nuts," and it's like, no, that breaks the fast, you're not then you're just starving yourself
Yeah.
because you're not in autophagy, your body isn't able to, like, do the mechanisms of why fasting's beneficial.
Can you touch on that? Because I get a lot of questions. I've fasted, I've not fasted. What are your thoughts on when should you fast? And yeah, like, what are your thoughts on fasting
Yeah.
overall?
Men respond typically better than women in general. But either way, most people, when they come through my door, they are exhausted. They're not eating enough. They're so stressed. And so there's healthy stressors out there. Exercise is a healthy stressor. It's stressful in the body, but it's good for you. Fasting, good for the body, but it's a healthy stressor. So if someone's already so depleted and just so run down, and I'm like, we're going to add another stressor and see how you do, it's like they're already just not eating enough in general. And so I don't usually typically start with fasting. I will in like maybe a therapeutic extreme circumstances, but most people, it's just like, you're just not eating enough. We just need to start nourishing you and getting you some sleep and getting you some sunshine. And then a few months in when like the nervous system's regulated and energy's back, it's like, now let's introduce some fasting. I muscle test for it. I can talk about that. But I just ask the body, what's your window? And that seems to work great. But I bring it in when people are starting to feel better.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's a really good reminder. I don't think that, I mean, different seasons. I did it this past summer and I felt great while doing it, but I was also doing like a 15-hour fast, which is really not that long. And I was eating plenty during I actually didn't ever count my calories or anything. I shared this on a previous podcast, but obviously now I'm pregnant and will not fast for the entire duration because you really can't. You're just,
Yeah,
like,
not
so
a good
hungry all
idea.
the time, and then same
Yeah.
with breastfeeding.
You
Yeah.
pointed to something really good there that I tell people is pay attention to how fasting makes you feel.
Mhm.
And it is just a dead giveaway because there's people, and I don't mean when you fast, but you drink a bunch of coffee. Like, if you are without caffeine, do you have energy? Because some people do. They fast and they're like, "I feel mental clarity, I feel great." And then other people are like, "I was dragging, it was awful." And it's like, your body's telling you,
Yeah,
just listen.
absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk about muscle testing a little bit. How would you I always struggle. I'm not a person that muscle tests clients, but I know what it is. I believe in it. I think it can be super beneficial for people, but how do you explain it to people?
Totally. Applied kinesiology is the formal term, first of all, but most people call it muscle testing. There's two kind of avenues to describe it, explain it. One's with the nervous system, and I'll start there, I guess. Our body is a circuit of electricity. So we work like a system. We work like magnets in electricity almost. So there's parts of your body that have more positive charges, and I'm talking not as we say the woo-woo positive negative, but literally like electrons, ions charged. And there's parts that are more negative. And so if you think of a magnet, a positive and a negative are drawn to each other. There's an ease there. And then when you have two positives or two negatives, those are not drawn to each other, they repel. And so you can work with the body like it's that kind of magnetic electric system. So to describe muscle testing, it's funny to try to just use words because I'm always,
Yeah.
giving demonstrations to people, but I have my client. And a side note, we say client, not patient here, because patient, the word, like the etymology of it is like one who suffers. And there's
Interesting.
kind of that back to that identity of like, I'm a sick patient who needs your help. And I'm like, we have clients who hire us to support them in their health. Anyway,
That's
that's why I say
really
client.
good. That's
Isn't that cool?
very yeah.
I had to get that trained out of me when I started here from working in functional medicine with you.
Yeah.
Everyone was our patient.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have my client, they put their arms straight out in front of them, and I press down on their arm gently, and I just tell them, "Match my pressure." And there are times that they can keep their arms straight and match that pressure with ease. And what I'm testing is their deltoid muscle, so right on their shoulder. And so when they can keep their arms straight with ease, that's called a locked muscle. And then there's times, based on what we're doing, I can be pressing on their arm, and no matter how hard they try, they can't keep it up with ease. It ratchets or it lets go, and that's called an unlock. And there's so much that information you can get from the body with a lock and an unlock, whether it's a yes and no question or things like that. But essentially, one way I kind of calibrate with people is they put their hand on their head, and the top of your head has a more negative charge. The bottom of your palm of your hand is a more positive charge. So for the video, this.
Yeah.
And they put their arm out, and I press on the arm, and they can just keep it straight with ease. And that's because
Mm,
going back to that magnet, a positive and a negative, they go together. There's an ease there. You flip the hands and you have a negative, negative, and the nervous system is like, "Ooh, I don't like that. That's not, there's dis-ease there." And that's when we'll get an unlock. And so I do that with people
interesting.
first, even just to practice for them how hard to push back. You don't want them out muscling you and pressing so hard. You don't want them to be a limp noodle. It's like, can you just match this pressure that I'm putting on your wrist, on your arm? But another kind of fun one is I have them say their name. So you would say, "My name is Andy," and I'd push on your arm and it stays nice and strong. And then I'd have you say, "My name's Maddie." And your body knows that is not true. And we get an unlock in the muscle. And
Interesting.
it's really beautiful because I'm like, truth strengthens us. Truth resonates with us. When you say, "My name is Andy," it resonates with you because there's a truth there. And when you say a different name, it does not resonate.
Mm,
And we do this in our day-to-day life. Like, you can't argue it. It's like if someone is speaking something truth, and even if you don't totally understand it, but you have that feeling in your gut of like, I know this is true, you probably lean in a little bit, like, towards them. And then you have like the salesperson who's BSing you, and you just feel it in your bones. You're like, this person is, yeah, totally just trying to sell me something. They don't care about me at all. You tend to lean away. You lean back and you're like, this does not resonate with me. And so that's part of muscle testing, but also the intuition, the subconscious, the body knows what it needs. And that's another cool thing of chiropractic philosophy is they say the power that made the body heals the body.
mm,
And the people that taught me muscle testing, they kept talking about infinite wisdom in our body that wants to communicate with us. And as baptized Christians, we believe the Trinity lives in us. And that sounds like infinite wisdom to me. And so it's working with, that power that heals the body, being able to almost communicate with that in yeses and nos. But then you have the science piece to it too with the nervous system and the
yeah.
charges and things like that. So how I do it, there's so many methods you can use. I've combined about 4 or 5 and just kind of made my own. But I start with body scans. I test people's organs and their glands and some systems. And there's times where the muscle stays locked. I have my hand by your liver. We get a nice lock. Your liver does not need support. If I put my hand by your liver and we get an unlock, it's your body saying like, yep, weakness
Mm,
there, needs support. And there's ways to prioritize organs of like, okay, if there's, 5 or 6 that are kind of off, what do we need to work on first? And that's kind of cool too. There's hand modes in muscle testing, and it's about how you're stretching the fascia on your hand. And we know there's like a big neurological connection between your brain and your hand. Like, remember we at our functional medicine clinics, we do those neuro tests, and you're asking people like, how fast can you move your fingers, like from your thumb, finger to finger? It's kind of like this, for the
yeah.
video. And it's like, and can you skip fingers? And can you do that quickly without thinking too hard about it? So there's a big brain to hand connection
Mhm.
there of like, we test brain health through what we're doing with our hands. And so there's different ways you can stretch the fascia on your hand that give you certain answers too of like, what's our priority organ today?
Mm.
And then I have vials that I test with that are programmed with some of the most common stressors people have, different types of infections, parasites, heavy metals, mold, virus, bacteria, things like that. And those resonate with the body as well. So if I put, my vial of arsenic near someone and we get a weak muscle in that area, it's showing me like that it's resonating in that spot. I've had a lot of musicians come in and they explain like resonance to me too, and it makes more sense to them. They totally grasp it, like people who are like super into music theory, which is interesting. But I use those vials too. You can test where are toxins present, how much are they, how like the order kind of, because you can think of detox like layers of an onion. What do you need to do first? We've all been exposed to parasites and metals and mold and bacteria. Like what is actually causing the issue here and in what order of events do you need to go? Kind of a side tangent there is a lot of people just like jump into heavy metal detox, and usually you want to do heavy metals last. And it's like people's bodies will test that way in muscle testing. Like it always almost always comes up towards an end of a detox. And I learned that the hard way. I think we were still working together and I was just starting to study nutrition and all this stuff, and I just ordered TRS. It's like a little heavy metal detox spray. And I had never been more anxious in my life, and I didn't know what was going on, and then later learned, like, if you just pull out metals, but you have parasites and biofilms and all these other toxins that are just gonna absorb and, like, recirculate the metals, you're gonna feel awful. But if you've detoxed a lot of those things first, and then you pull metals, out of your cells, organs, tissues, and your exits are clear, you have good drainage, like, they can actually get out rather than recirculate, like, you'll feel so much better.
What are your top 3 supplements that
Oh,
everyone should be taking? And this is interesting too because Maddie has a lot of that anecdotal evidence of muscle testing so many
yeah.
people, but, like, what is pretty much everyone deficient in? Probably because of our world, our lifestyles. What does everyone need?
Yeah, I talk about the liver 50 times a day. I think in my office, everybody needs liver support. The world has never quite been this toxic, and we cannot adapt fast enough to how fast our world has adapted. 100 years ago, not all of our food was coming in plastic, and you can control the controllables and use more glassware and things like that. But the things sprayed on our clothes that we don't even realize, the things sprayed in the air, what's in our water, it's like these toxins, some of them are unavoidable. And the amount coming at us constantly is just like our bodies have never seen anything like it. And so most people I test, whether it's on the biofeedback machine or muscle testing, there's liver overwhelm, and your liver has 500 jobs. Like, it's busy, it's got a lot to do.
Yeah.
It's your hormone hub, it synthesizes nutrients when we talk about methylation and how that can affect mental health, like 80% of methylation's happening in the liver. Like, your liver's huge. So, that's a long way to say most people end up testing for a cell core supplement I have here called KL support. It stands for kidney liver. And it's things like milk thistle and acetylcysteine that just they support the phase 1 and the phase 2 detox pathways, open up that drainage. So that's one people usually test for. Another one called biotoxin binder. It's a lot of binders out there, activated charcoal, bentonate clay, they're good, but you can only be on them for about 2 weeks at a time because they'll also bind up your minerals and they'll make you deficient. And so you can stay on them short term, but Cellcore made something called selective binders. They only bind to the bad, and they can get through your cell wall without damaging your cell and actually bring toxins out. And so that's huge too, because it's going to bind to the pesticides that your neighbors sprayed or, the plastics, the all kinds of things that the mold you're exposed to when you walk into an old school or an old church. So drainage, the KL, the liver support, the binder. And then a lot of people complain of bloating or like smelly gas, and it's usually connected to low stomach acid. And so most people test for, I use standard process. It's called Zypan, but it has betaine HCl in it. So you can find that in a lot of digestive supports. But yeah, stomach acid gets suppressed through stress. But also to make it, you need good hydration, you need good bile, and you need good minerals. And a lot of people are lacking in all of those areas. And so while I work with them to kind of get back to being able to make it yourself in better quantities, we just start with Zypan. And it's like one of my favorites because it's another quick win. People will come back and they're like, I'm not bloated. I can see my abs for the first time in like 10 years.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those would be my top three.
Those are great. I think, yeah, especially I definitely agree with the liver. I think especially with I work with a lot of fertility, and I just feel like especially in social media and everything, it's like hormones, 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 but where, yes, like you said, where the hormones being synthesized, where the precursors, it's all liver. Like you have to go back to why are your hormones off in general? And it's something deeper than just your hormones being off. Like the body's just trying to adapt.
Mhm.
And I think that's really good of sharing like even the toxins, yeah, the heavy metals and you can make it worse sometimes, and this is where the foundations are so good of getting outside and sweating and movement and less stress because really they they all have a play in these
Totally.
and if the supplement's effective or not. So, I love that. Okay, I feel like we need to have part 2, and I was just thinking about this while you're talking, like, I feel like it'd be really fun for us to do, like, misconceptions of
Yeah,
hormones and then be like basically expand on that right there or misconceptions of the thyroid. We can go like system or I don't know, I'll play with it, but
yeah. We can brainstorm, that sounds fun.
I feel like there's so much more we can cover with this. But okay, where can people find you if they want to work with you, if they just have questions for you? Tell us all the details.
I am on Instagram, Maddy West NTM, Maddie with a Y. That's probably the easiest way to reach me as far as messaging and things like that. I work at Vita Nova Spinal Care in Littleton, so it's like vitanovaspinalcare.com too. You can book a phone consult for free on there and we can chat about your health issues, what you're looking for, see if it's a good fit. Those would probably be the best two places to find me. And I will say in the month of May for mothers, if you book an initial appointment with me, it's called a deep dive. We'll do a complimentary one for one of your children. And we're
Oh,
going to do the
that's a
same thing
great
in June
one.
for dads. Yeah. It's kind of a
Okay,
buy one, get one.
amazing. Okay, wow, that's a really great deal. Everyone check that out.
Can
And
I tell you why I did that?
yeah, yeah.
I had a family come in yesterday. I love working with families. Like we're just such a supportive
Mhm.
family office. And they always schedule all their appointments kind of back to back. And the dad came in first and the mom was running late with the other three kids. And so I worked on the dad for a little bit, checked in, and then when the rest of the family got there, the kids like ran in and just opened the door and were like, "Dad!" and just like ran
Aw,
into his arms. And I'm like, I love that I get to see this at work. Like it was
yeah.
just the beauty of the family,
Yeah,
And so I was
that's
like, I
really
want more families. I love when families come in.
I love that. Okay, well, thank you so much. We're definitely gonna have to do a part 2. Please, as always, guys, like and share the show. Share this episode with anyone there that you think it will resonate with. And then, of course, send us questions because this is stuff that Maddie and I talk about all the time. This is just 1 hour of conversation. We've had countless hours of conversation. So if there's anything you want to expand on, or if you have ideas for this little like misconceptions series that's I'm playing with right now out loud, let us know and we would love to do it and shoot us some questions. But yeah, Maddie, thank you for being on the show.
It was so fun. Thanks for having me.